Greek mythology is remembered for its mighty heroes, epic battles, and gods who shaped the world with thunderbolts and storms. But beneath all the glory lies something far darker: betrayal. Again and again, in these ancient tales, bonds of love, loyalty, and blood were shattered. Fathers turned on their children, husbands on their wives, and even the gods themselves proved unfaithful. These betrayals didn't just ruin relationships. They sparked wars, toppled kingdoms, and cursed entire bloodlines for generations. Some were born from ambition, others from lust or jealousy. A few were cold, calculated acts of vengeance, and each one left scars on the world of myth that could never be undone. So today, we're diving deep into the top 10 betrayals in Greek mythology, from the treacheries of kings and queens to the scandals of gods and titans. Some are shocking, some are tragic, and a few are almost too gruesome to believe. And stick around until the end, because our number 1 betrayal might just be the darkest act in all of Greek myth. The Greek fleet had gathered at Aulis, preparing to sail across the Aegean and wage war on Troy. But there was a problem. The winds refused to blow. Day after day, the ships sat still in the harbor, their sails limp, the men restless and uneasy. The seer Calchas was called upon to explain this strange calm, and his words were chilling. The goddess Artemis was angered, and she demanded a sacrifice before the fleet could move forward. Not just any sacrifice, the life of Agamemnon's daughter, Iphigenia. For the king of Mycenae, this was an impossible choice. Without the sacrifice, the war could not begin. With it, he would stain his hands with his own child's blood. But ambition and duty clouded his heart. He chose betrayal. Agamemnon sent for Iphigenia, but he did not tell her the truth. He wrote to his wife Clytemnestra and spun a cruel lie, that Iphigenia was to marry Achilles, the greatest hero of Greece. Clytemnestra believed her husband's words. She brought her daughter to Aulis with joy and pride, preparing her for a wedding that would never happen. When they arrived, the truth was revealed in the most horrifying way. There was no marriage, no feast, no bridegroom waiting at the altar. Only the priests, the soldiers, and the sacrificial fire. Agamemnon, her father, ordered her bound to the altar of Artemis, and as she cried out in confusion and terror, he raised the knife. The blade fell, and the betrayal was complete. The winds began to stir. The ships set sail, carrying the Greeks to Troy and to a war that would last 10 years. But at home, Agamemnon's crime planted seeds of vengeance. Clytemnestra, who had trusted her husband with her daughter's life, never forgave him. She carried her grief like a burning coal, waiting for the day Agamemnon would return. When he finally stepped into his palace after Troy's fall, Clytemnestra struck. With the help of her lover Aegisthus, she murdered him in his own bath, paying blood for blood. The betrayal of Iphigenia had led to the betrayal of Agamemnon, and the curse of their house deepened. The story of Agamemnon and Iphigenia shows how ambition can corrupt even the strongest bonds, in this case, between father and child. Agamemnon chose power over love, glory over family, and in Greek mythology, choices like that never go unpunished. His betrayal was not the beginning of a curse on his house, it was the continuation of one, dragging his bloodline into tragedy after tragedy. Deep within the palace of Crete lay the labyrinth, a twisting maze built by the genius Daedalus to hold the monstrous Minotaur. Every year, Athens was forced to send youths as tribute, condemned to wander the dark halls until they were torn apart by the beast. Among the chosen was the Athenian prince, Theseus. Brave and determined, he vowed to end the cycle of terror by slaying the Minotaur. But courage alone would not save him. The labyrinth was endless, designed so no man could ever find his way out. That is where Ariadne, daughter of King Minos, entered the story. She fell in love with Theseus at first sight, and she resolved to help him. Ariadne gave him 2 gifts, a sword to fight the Minotaur, and a ball of thread to mark his path through the maze. With her aid, Theseus found the beast, fought it in the darkness, and killed it. Guided by the thread, he escaped the labyrinth, leading the Athenian youths back to freedom. Theseus and Ariadne fled Crete together, bound for Athens. For Ariadne, this was the beginning of a new life. She had turned her back on her family, her kingdom, even her father, to be with him. But on the island of Naxos, betrayal struck. As Ariadne slept, Theseus abandoned her. When she awoke, the ship was gone, and she stood alone on the shore, heartbroken and deserted by the man whose life she had saved. The myths differ on what happened next. Some say Dionysus appeared, claiming Ariadne as his bride and raising her to immortality. Others leave her fate more tragic, wandering the island until her life ended in sorrow. As for Theseus, his betrayal had consequences too. Sailing away from Naxos, he forgot to change the sails on his ship from black to white. His father, King Aegeus, watching from the cliffs of Athens, believed his son had died in Crete. In grief, he threw himself into the sea, a sea that still bears his name. Theseus returned not as a celebrated son, but as a king whose reign began with the weight of two betrayals: Ariadne's love and his father's trust. The story of Theseus and Ariadne reminds us that betrayal is not always committed by villains. Even heroes can prove ungrateful, selfish, and cruel. Theseus is remembered as one of Athens' greatest champions, yet the shadow of Ariadne's abandonment never left his legend. In the royal halls of Troy lived Cassandra, daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. She was celebrated for her beauty, but even more for the gift that would define her life. The god Apollo, drawn to her, offered her a bargain. If she would give him her love, he would grant her the power to see the future. Cassandra accepted the gift. But when it came time to return Apollo's affection, she recoiled. She refused the god, breaking the promise he thought she had made. Apollo could not take back his divine gift, but he could twist it into something cruel. In his anger, he spat into her mouth, cursing her so that no one would ever believe her visions. From that moment, Cassandra's prophecies turned into a prison. She saw the truth of what was to come, but to everyone else, her warnings were nothing more than madness. And so it began. She cried that Troy would fall if Paris brought Helen within its walls. She begged her people not to trust the wooden horse left by the Greeks. She foresaw her own death and the blood of her family spilled on the floor of their palace. But every time, her words were ignored, her truth dismissed as lies. Cassandra's curse doomed her. When the Greeks finally took Troy, she was dragged from the temple of Athena, where she had sought refuge, and claimed as a prize by Agamemnon. Even then, her visions continued. She warned him of the murder waiting at Mycenae, but once again her words carried no weight. She died alongside him, slaughtered by Clytemnestra. Her entire life was a tragedy, not because she lacked the truth, but because betrayal had stolen her voice. The god who had once given her power had made sure it could never save her. Apollo's betrayal of Cassandra is one of the most haunting in all mythology. It shows the cruelty of divine pride, how a god could twist a gift into a curse out of wounded vanity. Cassandra became a symbol of unheeded truth, a reminder that sometimes the greatest betrayal is not disbelief itself, but knowing you were meant to be silenced. On Olympus, marriages were rarely built on love. They were alliances, arrangements, and sometimes punishments. When Zeus gave Aphrodite's hand to Hephaestus, it seemed on the surface to be a union of beauty and craft. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and desire, while Hephaestus, the lame god of the forge, was a master builder and inventor. Together, they could have been an unstoppable pair. But Hephaestus was never Aphrodite's choice. She longed for passion, not the clang of hammer on anvil, and in her heart, she turned away from her husband to another god entirely, Ares, the god of war. Aphrodite's affair with Ares was hardly subtle. They met in secret, embracing in Hephaestus's own home while he toiled at his forge. But Hephaestus was not blind. The god of fire was also the god of cunning, and he hatched a plan for revenge. In his workshop, he crafted an invisible net of chains, impossibly fine but unbreakable. He draped it over his marriage bed and waited. When Aphrodite and Ares lay together, the trap snapped shut. bound and tangled. They could not escape. Hephaestus summoned the gods of Olympus to witness their humiliation, but instead of sympathy, the hall of heaven erupted with laughter. Poseidon chuckled, Hermes made crude remarks, even Apollo joined in. For Hephaestus, the betrayal was doubled. Not only had his wife been unfaithful, but his revenge became a spectacle, turning his pain into comedy for the immortals. The affair between Aphrodite and Ares continued, even after the scandal. Hephaestus, despite his cleverness, never truly won back respect. For Aphrodite, the shame meant little. Her beauty